Well, hello there. My name is HW. Welcome to Tone Junkie TV. This is just a normal video. Tone, guitar, how to. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. Just a normal video. All right, they're probably gone now. My friends, I have gone deep into the underbelly of the guitar world, deep into the dark web, where Chipsons are from. And what I've discovered is this Chinese illegal guitar trade that is more in your backyard than you know. It happens not on websites and places where you and me would do all of our normal dealings, but in these sort of secret groups, these secret message boards, these websites that look legit, but when you get behind what's really going on, you got to get a password, a code, and once you're in, you can find all the guitars that look like this. This is not real. What is real? None of this is real. All right, so little disclosure before I go any further. I'm not endorsing buying a guitar like this, and I'm not gonna. But I'm also not gonna expose or reveal any of the names of groups or websites that I discuss in this video. I don't want anyone coming after me or saying that I got their business or little group or website or whatever shut down. I also don't want anyone saying that I'm endorsing theft or whatever. There's some moral and legal implications here. Obviously, this guitar violates patent and trademark law, at least in the United States, for the headstock and logo here, and pretty much everywhere in the world that has IP protection for that. And in the United States, this body shape, I believe, is protected. I'm not telling you what to do one way or the other. I'm approaching this purely from like a journalistic standpoint, little citizen journalism here, because I had no idea how many of these were out there, how readily available they were just from websites, and how they're sitting in warehouses in the United States, ready to ship to customers' doors, and how that is happening, but not a lot of people know about it, and how this is just like a weird underground thing. Okay, so my story with this Chipson starts at NAMM. I didn't see this guitar at NAMM, but in the couple days following NAMM, I wanted to go to some guitar stores, and would you believe that every guitar store from like Tarzana, Norm's and Tarzana, Imperial, Burbank, everything down to Long Beach is closed on Sunday and Monday. So these days that I had just thought, oh, I'll just troll around town and sort of look at some stuff, were a waste. So I called up a buddy and I went to his house just to hang out, and he had a Chipson, and it was weirdly light. Like, this guitar is really light too, but his was like a feather. And it looked good. It looked good. All these guitars look really good. And his, apart from being weirdly light and the pickups being very microphonic, he had done a really good job setting that guitar up and did a little work on it. And he sort of said, you're gonna have to do some stuff. The guitars come better or worse, but he had only bought a Chipson or two, and it was kind of new to everyone in the room. And so I was interested. I was thinking, what can you import? What guitar can they make for $150, $250, $350, $450, $550? I mean, some of these guitars do start to get up there, but a $550 Chipson is going to look like a $5,000 custom shop Gibson, or it's going to look like a model you can't get anymore or something, or it's going to be real aged like this. I mean, this guitar looks the part, And I was curious, and how does this work? Where do you get them? So we looked at a couple eBay listings, and my buddy kind of told me, well, look, you can kind of tell because these listings, they either have like a piece of tape right here on the photos, or it'll be like cropped right here. This is the most you'll see it. You'll see the whole guitar, but it'll just be like that. And I thought, And so I tried messaging a couple of these sellers and asking, does it have the G logo? Does it have the F logo? And they got back to me and said, yeah, it does. And we can put a different logo if you needed something else. One of them said that. And so I thought this is interesting. So I started looking around, and I'm realizing, chipsin is just a name. It's just like it's a slang term for any sort of counterfeit guitar. It doesn't even have to be made in China. It could be Indonesia or Malaysia or wherever the cheapest guitars are made. Used to be Korea, used to be Japan, not anymore. And so I start looking on eBay, and I'm looking around, and somehow the magic of Facebook, it's sort of, they say they don't watch what I'm doing, but all of a sudden they start recommending these certain groups, these chipsin owners groups. And so I realized, like, the algorithm on Facebook is now pointing me towards these guitars. So I found myself in some chipsin's owners groups. And this is where I'm going to stop using any names. In those groups was some discussion about different manufacturers. And one manufacturer in particular had a pretty good reputation, and they had their own private Facebook group. And I linked over there, and what I found was this community of all these people who were basically buying these guitars and then doing some work, setting them up, and enjoying them, and they loved them. And there's no talk in those groups about the morality of it. There's no talk about is this right or wrong? Is it illegal? No one ever talks about anything like that. It's just, whoa, what a cool guitar. And what I found really interesting was people would post a picture of a Gibson and say, hey, can we get this? And I started seeing all these terms like group buy thrown around, and discount window. And I noticed there was a couple people in these groups that they would post something and say, would anyone be interested in this? And then they would get these group buys where if 10 people committed, they could build the guitar for $350. And so that clued me into, somewhere there is some manufacturer looking to make these guitars. They want orders. They're ready to make them. They're not necessarily being produced in this, in this super mass production where it's like, here's 3,000 of the same cheap, Gibson standard model. And that's interesting because I would have thought that there's just like someone's making a couple thousand of these and then trying to pass them off on Craigslist or on eBay or something as the real deal. But what's actually happening is there are factories, from what I can see in these groups, that are really waiting for orders, and they would have photos in the factories of the guitars being painted, and you could get photos updating you along the way, which I thought was really interesting. So I saw a lot of these orders, and as long as there was, 15 people willing to do it, they would sort of give you a link to buy. And so I wanted to follow this link. So I said, hey, can I get one of these links? How do I buy one of these? You can't buy through the Facebook group. But there's these posts that say, here you go, code is this. I go, what code? Now it's a strange thing. They would post the code without the URL. And so I messaged one of these guys, one of the group admins, and I said, where's the website that I could buy this guitar? I'm very interested. I have the code. And he sent me a website link that went to a website that just asked me for a code. You couldn't see anything on it. It said password. And so I entered the code, and boom, all of a sudden, I'm looking at all of these fake Gibson guitars, chipsin guitars. Now, I looked at that URL, and I realized it had sort of a generic guitar name. And so I took some things away from the URL link he sent me, and I realized this was a legitimate facing website that had no knockoff guitars. They appear to do like some legitimate business, but it's a front, It's just a front that looks like they sell these kind of guitars. They don't look like counterfeits. They have a brand name, like a, I'm not going to say the name, but like a, Excalibur brand name, and or a Phoenix kind of brand name. And you would think you're buying, a cheap, kind of a Les Paul-esque guitar. They don't look like this. The body styles are different. It's all just, they look like cheap guitars, right? And then when you get behind the scenes, you realize there's a whole website behind that has all sorts of stuff. And I quickly kind of figured out when I asked, hey, what if I I started thinking about this code they gave me that gave me access. And I thought, why is this a code like this? Like, are there other codes that could get me access to other things? So I messaged one of them, and I said, hey, I have this code, and it shows me all these guitars, but what I'm really looking for is a little different type of guitar. is there other codes that unlock other brands? And I was told, no, that code unlocks everything, but we can custom make something if you'd like to go that direction. But I noticed in my messages, the gentleman was very insistent, use that code. Please don't forget to use that code at checkout, or you won't get the discount. You won't get the discount. You won't get the discount. Well, this really piqued my interest because I myself run a website and offer discounts. And sometimes people don't use them. And of course, I want people to use the discount, but it just struck me as a little funny that he was so insistent. Be careful not to check out without the discount. That made me believe that there was some motive for me using the discount. So I hung around this group a little more, and I wandered into another Facebook group that sort of did a similar thing. And there I found a link posted to a separate Facebook group that had a different music name, China Music something or other. And I realized that they were utilizing the same website, but a different code. And I entered this other code, and it kind of got me in there. And I realized, okay, what we have is one website, one maybe manufacturer that is offering discount codes to some actors in the world. And they want, each of those actors want you to use their discount code. Why would that be? Well, I would guess that they're getting some sort of a commission on the sale of this guitar. So this guitar cost me $298, and I don't know. I'm guessing the manufacturer, is selling it for like $298 shipped. I don't know if shipping's $40. Maybe those guys are getting $50. Maybe they're getting $200 for this, so they're making it for $100. I don't quite understand how the economics work. Now, some of the guitars get more expensive. I went for a cheaper one because I just wanted to sort of check out the quality of the thing. But what happened next was I ordered the guitar, I got it in, and it took forever to come, and there was no communication. I actually thought I got ripped off because it went days and days and days. I sent an email. I didn't get anything. But I realized there's these two guys in the group who sort of handle the orders or take the orders or seem to be ordering the guitars. And in this other group, it seemed to be just one account, but it wasn't a person's identity. It was like a company or page's identity. And it seemed you could just buy anything. People were buying 5, 10, and it makes sense. Look, you could sell one Les Paul for $1,500, like a used standard or something, and you can get 5 of these, But how did they hold up? So I got the guitar in, and I wanted to show it to some friends. So I got it in. I had my impressions, and I brought it on my little Guitar Friends podcast that I do on the channel here, and I showed it to my buddy the Suze, and this was his first impression.
It's already not as good, but let's plug it in.
Let's plug it in. Here you go.
Nah, man. This is far below both of those guitars. I wanted to love it. It looks so good.
Dude.
The finish is my favorite out of all three.
So this thing got to me with a ton of problems. My buddies played a lot nicer. He had done some work. He set it up a bit and fixed the nut up a bit, and this is a guitar that you would need to put work into if you bought it. And so to me, I would just ask, if you buy this thing for $300 and then you need to put in $100 to set it up, that would be cheap. Who's going to set your guitar up for $100? Not a lot of people these days. You're going to need to get a new nut cut for it, maybe. You're going to want to replace the pickups. You're quickly going to double the price of this guitar if you do all of that on the super cheap. And at that point, you're at $600-$700. You could buy a vintage brand guitar, which I think are incredible for the money. You could also just buy a Harley Benton for about the same money as this, a little more. Or you could get one of the nicer Harley Bentons and be at about double this price, $550 or so, and you kind of get a way better guitar, in my opinion. But Here's what shocked me about this whole thing. Once I ordered this guitar, I realized that they were advertising on the website 2-day ships or quick ships. And I started looking at, where all of this stuff would happen. Like, where does it come from? How does it get to me? This guitar took a long time. How could they do this 2-day ship and get it to me that quickly? Is it overnight? Is it more expensive? No, some of the guitars were just available as a 2-day ship. So that's when I ordered another one, or rather, I started talking to the guy about ordering it. But I tried to ask, hey, I want to get a custom guitar, but is there any way I can get the 2-day ship? And in that conversation, the gentleman told me, no, custom guitars are going to be made far away. They have a long lead time. They're not made here. The 2-day ship guitars are in our warehouse, which is functioning as normal. The reason he threw in it was functioning as normal is because one of these groups had just been shut down and then restarted on Facebook. So Facebook, apparently, the very same algorithm that sort of brought me here, listening on my microphone or whatever, because I'm on eBay searching or whatever Facebook does, they're looking at my web history or something. Yeah, I understand how cookies work and everything. But, I'm on eBay looking at chipsins. All of a sudden, Facebook's like, do you look at this chipsin group, right? So the algorithm doesn't seem to know that it's illegal, but someone must have reported the groups and stuff because one of the groups got shut down, and there was a lot of talk, is everything still okay? Are my orders okay? And he wanted to assure me the warehouse was up and running as normal. One of the things I noticed was that 2-day ship, when I asked about it, he said, no, it'll come from a warehouse. He didn't say where, but he said the warehouse is close to you. You'll get a 2-day ship. And that's when I realized, okay, that along with one of the other groups, which is not related to these other two groups, just happened to one day say the group was located at a specific address near the Port of Los Angeles. And that's when I realized these guitars are shipped here, sitting in warehouses, and the manufacturers make them, and they have a problem. They have no way to distribute them. You can't just put this guitar in a store. You can't just make an eBay listing that says, fake Gibsons, you want one? So I believe what they're doing is paying these sort of operators who start a little business with a little name and say, we can make these for you. And they often will talk about, I've spoken with the factory, or I've spoken with so-and-so at the factory, and, bing, bang, boom, they can make you a custom guitar or something. But it appears they're making some commission because they want you to use their code, and multiple of them are using the same website for ordering, but they set up these different Facebook groups and sort of point you there, and they're making a commission by finding a buyer. The factory in China can make these things, but they have no buyers. They're shipping them here to a warehouse where they're just waiting to be shipped out, and they're struggling to find these buyers. So people are onesie, twosies. Can we sell 12? Can we sell 20? What can we make? Does anyone want one? Hey, I got a limited edition group buy on this guitar right here, and I also signed up for several of these group buys and then never went through. I never paid for them. I'm trying stuff just to sort of see what I can find out in this group. And several times I just backed out. There'd be 12 people for the group buy. It's like, we needed 12. We need 12 people for this group buy to make it happen. I'd sign up, and then I'd never pay for it. They never sent me the guitar. No order ever existed. No one really cared. And that's what made me start to realize it's all just a charade. It's made up. It's like a Tone Junkie flash sale. How come I just don't make 1,000 of the codes? I guess I could. Why do I limit them? It's just scarcity, man. It motivates people. I want to give something away, but I don't want to give everything away. You know what I mean? And it's sort of a weird thing to know that these guitars are just all over the place. And dude, they got a bunch. Like, I asked one guy in one of the smaller groups, hey, could I get 10 of these? And he was like, sure. That was it. Sure. Which, I don't know what to make of that. Like, what am I going to do with 10? I'm going to place them in a store? They didn't seem to care. They had 10 to sell. Am I going to go hawk them on Craigslist or eBay and not tell people? What would you do with 10 of the same chips in? Obviously, you're a seller. But they were like, sure. That was it. So now, granted, it wasn't an email. It was in a chat. We had been talking about stuff. But it just makes you wonder, man, what's out there. So I do see some of these groups getting shut down. I don't know what to make of all this, but little citizen journalism coming at you. These things are sitting in the United States. It appears there are motivated sellers in China who want to get them here. They're sitting here. And then there's people in these little Facebook groups that are, setting up these sort of front websites, and then you can get a code and go in and shop for everything. Do they need work? They need a ton of work. I compared this to a bunch of other Les Pauls on the Guitar Friends podcast on episode 3. It was fantastic. Check that out if you want to see how it compares. I think there's a lot better stuff for your money, but maybe if you're someone who just wants a beater guitar to work on, and you sort of like that it has that name on it, and you know what you're kind of getting, you can do that. And I just want to say one more thing about this whole copy, tribute thing. Let me grab one more guitar. So this is an 81 Greco, and it is a really fantastic guitar. And Greco is one of the brands that was made in Japan. And there was a time in this world where China wasn't the cheap place to get things manufactured, because it's not just about cheap manufacturing. Manufacturing, like in China, is where the world gets everything done for two reasons. They have two advantages. One is that it's cheaper. The Chinese go through this long thing that has to do with the petrodollar, which devalues their currency to keep their currency from inflating, because they have such a growing economy. If the yuan wasn't actually indirectly pegged to the American dollar, which a lot of people don't realize that, but you can go look it up. The yuan is pegged to the U.S. dollar indirectly through the buying of treasuries and other instruments. They have no interest in their currency going up in value, because they want it to be cheap to manufacture for the West to keep buying. They want to be an exporter nation. But the other thing is this: they massively have expertise compared to the rest of the world. You cannot make a phone or a TV anywhere in the world but these places that have these expertise. We simply do not have the engineering here to make many electronics that we use all the time. We just don't have the machines. We don't have the know-how. We don't have Americans who are skilled in those industries, because the industries have been either gone from America for so many years, or those industries have never existed. Cell phone manufacturing has never existed in the United States. So if you're a company that needs specialized manufacturing around very small LCD liquid crystal displays with these little this and that, you can't get that made in the United States. Semiconductors, where do you get where the chip shortage? Where are these chips being made? They're only made in a couple of places. We're bringing American manufacturing back now, because post the shutdown, we wanted supply chains to be better. But the number one place is Taiwan. They're ahead in the semiconductor industry compared to everyone. That's where they're all coming from. Anyway. The thing that strikes me is, once upon a time, Japan was where you had things manufactured for cheap. And Japan was known as the cheapy stuff. And they made cheap toys for kids in the 70s and 80s. And Japan came way up, especially in the mid to late 80s and in the 1990s. Japan got too expensive to manufacture, and that was the uprise of, or sort of the rising of Chinese manufacturing and the Chinese economy. This guitar they're called lawsuit guitars. I believe only one lawsuit was ever filed, and it was against Ibanez. But they use these other names that just from a distance look like Gibson. But I'm going to tell you, from owning these two things, the ethos of these two guitars could not be more different. This guitar is a replica of a 1971. I mean, the pickups sound kind of like a 1971. The volute on the back is a 1971. And what's interesting is, if they copied a 68, they'd be copying a guitar worth 3 times more, but it's a 71, which at the time they made this was not a very sought after instrument. And all through the 90s, up until only about 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years ago, were these early 70s Gibsons, even the Norland era stuff, even kind of viewed as sought after. This is like someone who really wants to replicate something they respect. This is something that looks the part in a photo, and you can tell there's very little respect for the components inside. There's a huge difference there. As a guitar player, I'll tell you, there's a huge difference. I just wanted to kind of point that out. It's two companies copying something in very different ways and with completely different ethos. So, okay. Tin Hat, and just bang these two things together. Tin Hat, over. I've been HW. Thanks so much for watching Doja TV. This was fun. The underground world of Gibsons, Chibsons, and the like.